All right. Hey, Ted.
Hey,
Friday night.
John.
How's it going?
Friday night, date night. It's
Yeah,
going good. Yeah, really good. How about you? How was the week of training? Did you get anything accomplished?
I've been doing a lot of strength training and stretching primarily.
Is that
Working on
mostly because you're on your trailer?
that's on my trailer. That's right. I am so sore. My hands, my
Oh, I
shoulder.
bet.
I can't. I'm stiff, turn and turn, but it's all that lifting and bending and stepping in the trailer out there. I know that sounds silly, but
No, it's probably some of the best cross training you could do, right?
totally, I'm getting all this plyometric work. So. And then taking the nails off and twisting, and my hands are just
Oh man,
destroyed right
did you get all the skin off of it?
now. I got the skin, yes. So that's trailer talk. Thank you. That's
Yep.
I de-skinned the trailer, and
Nice.
I've left the roof on for now. But I don't think I need to take the roof off because there is a risk of bending it if I take it off. So,
All
but
right. Well, don't hurt yourself now.
yeah, well, I've already done that, but yeah. So
Don't-
I
don't-
was so beat up from taking nails and moving things around and taking putty off that tonight I just worked on the electrical part, and I'm like, oh, this will be an easy job. I just want to confirm everything's right, and it's not right.
Of
So
course not. Of
now I have
course
to
not.
go back and figure out some of the wiring that has happened over the 55 years that this trailer has existed. So.
This off-season project might be the best thing that ever happened to your triathlon, though. Like you're not focused on triathlon training. Your mind is on that, and honestly, it's a beautiful thing. It's an
Yeah,
absolutely beautiful thing.
and so I still get my minimum training in. That's my
Yep.
goal. And what I do for my biking is I jump on my mountain bike. I do a nice route to the pool, jump in the pool and swim, and bike home. So trying to continue to sustain a certain level of
Yep.
fitness. Obviously, my fitness drops off a bit, but still trying to incorporate that.
How'd the hill climb go last weekend? The trick or treat time trial for
Uh,
you,
I just did. I didn't do it like a time trial. I did it just for a ride. So,
just for a ride. Okay.
like that ride. It's the Pumpkin Man route, and
Yep.
it's such a great race. I do miss. It would have been a perfect day. Well,
Oh
actually,
my gosh.
when
Last weekend, Saturday and Sunday were just two of the best weather days I think we've had all year.
yeah,
Yeah,
they were fantastic.
it was fantastic. And now
And
we got the bad weather coming in.
yes, well, it looks like it's gonna blow in again. So we'll see.
Yeah.
And you did some Zwift time trialing tonight, or
Yeah,
some
I did. I just got off the Zwift race, a training race for my teams in the Zwift Racing League, and tonight was a little training race for our Tuesday night league. So that was pretty good. And then last weekend I did the treat version of our time trial, and then Sunday I did a big bucket list ride for myself
Oh yeah.
around the Spring Mountains.
Wow.
So that was a tough day. I'm not gonna
140.
43 miles,
That's awesome.
and the last 50 into a headwind.
Oh,
I
brutal.
didn't expect it. And yeah, it turned onto 95, US 95. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, this is going to be brutal. The next 50 miles into a dead headwind. And I called my wife with about an hour and a half to go. Cause I got to Indian Springs and I called her and she's like, you want me to come save you? Cause she was actually near the edge of town. And I'm like, is it windy there too? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, nope, because you know what? I got an hour and a half to go and I want to knock this one out. I don't want to do it again.
Yeah, no. Oh, well, that's awesome. Now, did you take your Garmin satellite tracker with you?
I didn't. And it was funny because I was about 2 or 3 miles down the road and I'm like, I really should probably bring my Garmin satellite tracker with me because I've paid for this month
Yeah.
because I was going to do a few more adventure rides. And I didn't do it, but it was a good ride. It's a long way to go by yourself.
Yeah.
I did it, unsupported. It was about 8 hours of actual time. And so, but it was good. I've always wanted to do that route.
Yeah. That's
I can
great.
tell you if any of the Tri Club members are listening, it's a little dangerous. I'm not going to lie.
Mm-hmm.
There's a section of
dangerous.
there's 7 miles from where you turn off of 160 and you turn south on the 95.
Okay.
Until
Just
you
no
get to
shoulder.
Mercury. there's about, I want to say it's a 24-inch shoulder
Yeah.
with 12 inches of it super deep rumble strip.
Uh,
Like the really thick, like the 3-inch deep rumble strip.
yep.
But then you had about 12 inches of
Oh,
so I was so focused during that 7 miles. Like, I actually think that may have worn me out more than anything, was just
yeah. Right.
utter focus. And then, trucks are going by you and
Yep.
motor homes, and the road is pretty wide there, but just the shoulder was just, yeah. So unless you're very, very comfortable, and I would say an expert or very advanced rider, it's not a good section for sure.
Good. Well, I just looked to my left here. It's sort of like this. This is my schematic for my electronics that I'm trying to map out. So that's my that was my dangerous thing, and you're doing that right. So that's awesome.
Yep.
All right. Well, hey, I've got my Ironman Arizona shirt on.
Yeah, let's talk Ironman Arizona. What do we got? We have 3 weeks till, or 2. 2 weeks.
Let's see. Actually, what's the date of Ironman Arizona?
It's 2 weeks
today.
2 weeks from this weekend.
2 weeks, I think. Yeah, we got Ironman Florida this weekend.
Yep.
And we've got some locals doing that, and the 70.3 as well, Gulf Coast. So
it's kind of crazy to me to think about, like, just the way the season has been, that for a lot of people, this is the first race of the year.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And if you think about it, we're in November. This is normally like the crowning achievement of the year is Ironman Florida, Ironman Arizona, or a 70.3 this late. Normally this time of year, I'm getting ready to go for the nationals in Miami. Or, John, I mean, really, both of us were kind of looking at being almost leaving to go to New Zealand.
Yeah, that's right.
And obviously that didn't happen. But yeah, I think it's pretty fun that people are gonna get to race. I read a lot about the COVID preparations that were taking place that they did for Ironman, the 70.3 Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And sounds to me like it was very well put together. And it seems like Ironman and the world, is it what's called World Triathlon Corporation, WTC? Is that what it's called, that runs it?
Yep.
Have done a really good job. I really hope that they do a good job with these upcoming races. It's a really rough world right now that we're living in with COVID. And to be honest with you, for me, you couldn't get me on a plane right now.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that people are flying to Florida, that's great, but I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But that's my own personal thing. I would drive to Arizona though. I think I would.
Yeah, I think that's
control my environment.
I think that is an advantage of Arizona happening in our backyard, and I know we've got some people who are going to head down, and it's going to be their first Ironman. So I thought this is going to be great to be able to talk about the race. You've done it. I've done it 3 times, I think now. And so, it'll be fun to talk about what we do leading up to a race and go through some of the specifics. And it is the 22nd of November. So 2 weeks.
16 days. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So, that was my first and only Ironman. And I told myself I'd never do another one when I finished. And so, of course, we talked about last week, I've signed up for my next one.
That's great.
But, that for me, being the, that first foray into the Ironman, I thought it was a good choice, of course. It's not overly hot usually. And, the water temperature is good. It's flat, let's talk about that. Let's talk about do you want to start talking about the swim, or do you want to talk about, some prep beforehand?
We could do it either way. Prep. Well, why don't we start with a little bit of prep? Because I think what's important, we talked about this some time ago with our Course Recon podcast, but making a list, and especially if it's your first race, you really want to have your list of things taken care of, because otherwise you're worrying and stressing about things that are preventable. And believe me, I do that. And you know, I've gotten I've done a few more Ironmans than you have at this stage, but sometimes you get a little comfortable with it, and you shouldn't. And all of a sudden, you realize, or I realize, that I've forgotten something. So I did send this to someone else. They were asking about a list. Let me just share it real quick. So and again, we did some of this in our course recon, and I know you do this as well.
Yeah, I have lists of lists.
That's right. That's right. And I update this list. But I have what I call a master checklist. I have race gear, pre-race food, nutrition, warm gear, that I list just in case I need that, support gear, tools, I list everything that I want to be able to pack. And then I have a list specific for races. So that's Kona, Whistler 2018, Louisville, Silverman, all those different races. And the lists change based upon the race because conditions may
hot
change.
race, cold race.
Right.
Yep.
Traveling may change, and where we're headed. So, but T2 bag, bike special needs bag, having those things worked out ahead of time is really important. So doing a little bit of planning. You got 2 weeks before the race, and I would say make sure you make a complete list and organize it so that you can pack well. And then also when you get your bags, you'll be able to pack those specifically very well.
John, do you keep a list of like things you need to do? So like, oh, I gotta make sure I buy this. I gotta make sure, I, do, something to my bike, or I gotta, whatever it is. Do you do lists like that as well?
We have done schedules. And depending on who's going, if we're traveling with a group or where we are, we will often lay out a schedule. But I think our schedules, they aren't necessarily detailed, but we say, okay, Wednesday we want to do this, whatever this is. Maybe it's see the Ironman Village, or do the bike course, or.
Well, I'm saying when you're still at home. So like, for me, like I know if I'm going to fly on a Thursday, let's say, or travel on a Thursday, Tuesday, I'm packing my bike, right? And I'll schedule out 3 hours to do that. It doesn't take me 3 hours, but it always takes me 3 hours. Right? It shouldn't, but there's always, you're cleaning as you go. And, so I try and make almost like a training schedule the week before of things that I want to do. Like make sure I've got, I've built time into my schedule to do the packing and to do the lists. I don't know. Do you do something like that as well?
No, we do it, but we don't write it down. And so I really like that idea, though, is really sort of forcing the issue and saying, okay, Saturday, the week before the race, is the day that we're going to, like you said, pack the bikes or organize the nutrition. And so we have our pre-travel things that we need to do, but we don't necessarily put them down on pen to paper.
Maybe make sure you get your passport.
Yep.
I'm just saying. Not that you would, not that you'd ever forget your passport.
Yeah, someone's done that.
Oh man. So okay, so then let's say when you get to your location, you were mentioning the things you like to do. So I think that's, for me, one of the things is I always think that I'm going to have more time than I do.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say the race is on a Sunday and I get to the location on Friday. I'm like, oh man, I got plenty of time to do this. Maybe I'll get a little sightseeing in, and, I want to go see this. I'm going to tell you this, as far as I'm concerned, there's never enough time.
Yeah.
Right. And you basically, to be successful and get everything set the way you need it set, and bikes in certain places and shoes in certain places, the day before the race needs to be dedicated just to that.
Yeah.
Is that how you kind of go about it as well?
Oh, very much. And the bigger our travel trip, the more important it is to really have a discussion with whoever's going with us, if it's just Laura and I, or if we're going with other people, to really have a discussion about what we're doing each day, because it is easy to actually lose focus of the race, and all of a sudden you're not ready for on race day. The nice thing about Arizona that I like is that it's not a destination city. you
Well,
know,
not for
you
us.
you are going to race, and what's beautiful is that you can drive from Vegas, and so there's a little bit more flexibility in getting there, and then you have transportation when you are there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is really, and you know, with the COVID-19 year, I think there's going to be less temptation to be going
Yeah.
down and hanging out at the Ironman Village. I know they still have some of the village, um, but it's much more controlled. At least that's what 70.3 looked like.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I kind of, we talked a little bit of this, a race recon, like on a Friday for a Sunday race, I will maybe ride part of the course, and definitely get out, and if I can ride at least the run course or any technical parts of the course. The Saturday morning, oftentimes I'll ride again.
mhm,
Maybe just another piece of the course. I
yeah,
always drive. I always drive the bike course if I'm not familiar, like super familiar with it.
mhm,
Yeah, always do that, and that eats up time. You think about it, even for a 70.3 to drive a bike course, it's
yeah,
56 miles,
right,
right? And it's not 56 miles an hour. You want to actually be going relatively slow,
mhm,
stop, look at corners,
yeah,
pay attention. It could take a couple hours, you know, and I think you're right. Like if you're going with other people, they need to be well aware that, especially if you're sharing a car or something like that, hey, 2 hours of Saturday, it might be driving a bike course.
that's right. And I'll say, if you do your course recon on the bike in a car and it only takes you an hour and a half to 2 hours, you haven't done it right. Because
Exactly.
you will almost it will almost work against you, because you're going too fast in the car, and so you don't get a sense what it would be like if you're biking, how
Yeah.
sharp a turn would be, how steep the hill is. And so yeah, now going down to do recon at Arizona, if you're going to drive that, it's all within a very small radius, so it's going to be a little tricky doing course recon driving, or even biking, because of all the U-turns that you have to make in the
Well,
places,
especially this year.
especially this year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
you know, I, it's gonna be a fairly straightforward course. I was looking at the course map, but no, you're right. So I would say, really plan out what you're going to do when you get to Tempe, when you're going to. I think now you actually have to schedule your check-in, so
Right.
that takes care of that, and build around it. But build in time to check out the swim start, check out the transition area, know your directions, which way you're headed, uh, and know when you're going to do that when you're there that week.
Yeah. And one of the things we did talk a little bit about is oftentimes, in Arizona is one of them, it seems different the morning of the race when everything's dark,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you go there for example, on Saturday, and you're setting your stuff up, it looks one way.
Yep.
You get there at 4:30 in the morning, it looks completely different.
Yep.
And so you're right. Like checking things out is really important. One of my things is I always want to find a backup bathroom,
Yeah. Right.
right? It's like, because you know what? There's never enough bathrooms. We could have a whole podcast on this, John,
I know.
is race directors not having enough bathrooms, and bathrooms in the right place.
Well,
But
that's my one big tip, especially for first timers, is that after you get your transition area set up and you drop your bags off, go stand in line for the bathroom, no matter
yeah,
what, even if you don't feel like it. Then after you use the bathroom, get out and go stand in line again, because you probably need to go again, or at least
yeah,
be ready to. So,
yeah,
and the
I
lines get
agree.
a bit long.
Yeah.
All right. So I think
So,
the other thing,
like I said, I always try and locate a secondary one.
yeah.
It may be a mile away,
Mm-hmm.
but a nice in the morning, a mile walk or mile like light jog
Mm-hmm.
actually kind of loosens the bowels up a little bit more for me.
Right. Right.
So if I can find like a public park or something that's maybe a mile away, like that's one of the things that I do.
I like that. And I think in there's Tempe, when we've gone, we usually stay probably about, maybe we're around 5 miles away, depending on what we find. But we're driving in, and then we also want to know where to get coffee on the way in, and we
Yep.
try to make sure it's going to be open, and especially in
Yep.
the COVID-19 period, you got to make sure what time places are opening, if you can visit them, if they have bathrooms accessible,
Yep.
all that. You can figure that out ahead of time. It's all different right now. So
Yeah, and it'll all help lower your stress the morning of the race for sure.
yep, because that's the goal, is to be stress-free when you hit that start line, because you will be stressed enough. Anyone who's done that, you're always nervous. And if you're not nervous, maybe it's not I don't know, maybe it's not the right day. A little nervous.
So John, let's talk about not the tip. We don't really know. I don't really know exactly the COVID situation with starts, but let's talk about a typical Ironman or 70.3 start.
Mm-hmm.
And, I can speak to Arizona. To me, like, I lined up too late.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't miss the start because back then it was a mass start.
Yep.
But it was not a comfortable feeling rushing, swimming that first 250 to the start.
Yep.
It was 250 to the start, pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to miss the start. So, and it's happened to me in many races where, it gets so bundled up with people and people aren't seating themselves maybe properly. So it can be relatively difficult to get there. Yeah, this is a perfect map because where your tee is a long way to the actual start, right?
That's right. Yeah. This I think it's about a quarter of a mile.
Yeah.
Now, from what I understand, the way that they did the start at 70.3 is they still had sort of a corral area that you would hang out. And then they did have a walkway where everyone's 6 feet apart wearing masks. And then you get rid of the mask right before you enter the water.
Okay.
And so there is the line, from what I understood, was not that long. So it wasn't like people were all standing in line all the way back, back into the transition area. They were still sort of corralling with masks prior to that. So I would say after you do your transition setup, a real big key in any race is to know where you need to drop your bags off before going to the start. So you've got to drop off your special needs bag, both for the bike and the run. And those were usually right in the transition area. But with COVID-19, I would make sure to check in on that when they have that, the race day prep talk. And I imagine this year especially, they could do last minute changes. So really pay attention to where you drop your bags off, and then know where you drop off your morning dry goods bag. If you're not dropping it off to someone, the dry good drop off is usually close to the start so that you can wear your clothing still up until you get over to the start area.
Yep.
All right, so this, I think the only thing that's going to be different for this is that 6 feet difference in line.
Yeah.
But
man, that's gonna be a long line if you think about how many entrances are there? 2,000?
I don't know. The page said there's still spots available, so I'm going to guess there's going to be still 1,500, 2,000, and they
Spread out 6 feet. Spread out 6 feet. That's a long.
Yeah, but they're not all standing in line at the same time. That's what they did at the 70.3.
Okay.
Is they still had sort of a corral area, and then they had a shorter line of 6 feet apart.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be like. I would certainly spend some time figuring that out.
Yeah, because that's going to take a long time to get, let's say, 2,000 people in the water.
Yep.
A long time. I mean, that you could be waiting an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know the logistics.
Yeah.
So obviously, that's something you really got to think about is where you need to be. Cause I know, especially the more competitive people, they want to be near the front, and even the slower people want to be near the front because they want less time running in the dark.
Right.
Right. Cause it gets cold there. And as soon as the sun goes down, I mean, it drops. You've been out there in the dark,
What do you wear on your feet during this period of time?
Me, I wear throwaway socks.
Okay.
So I just bring an old pair of socks,
Mm-hmm.
and then just before I go, I throw them away.
Yep. That's
It's,
good. I've got that.
and I also every now and then I go to like a Goodwill, or anytime I can find some, if I'm at a hotel and they got throwaway slippers,
Mm-hmm.
I grab those.
Yep.
And or if I find like, somewhere along the lines got like $2 flip flops, I always buy a pair,
Yep.
and then I just leave
No,
them behind.
those are all perfect ideas. So if the dry goods bag is uh, close to the drop off is close to the start, I may actually even wear my cutoff shoes
Yep.
for after the race as well. But I
Yep.
do like wearing the throwaway socks because now you just don't care. But
Yep.
it at least keeps your feet
Yeah,
warm.
and then, I have depending on the race, I also do throwaway gloves. So
Mhm.
I bought Old Navy at one point had gloves on sale or something. They were like 99 cents a pair,
Oh, nice.
and I bought 20 pairs,
There you go. That was a good
and
investment.
they're just like little knitted gloves, and so it's the same thing. Like, sometimes in these mornings it's cold, and
Mhm.
the last thing you want to do is start the race with cold hands, cold feet.
Yep.
So yeah, I do the same with that as well. And then the other thing that I do, I'll bring a piece of like TheraTubing or TheraBand or something like that, and I'll do warm-ups with the band.
Hmm.
Same thing, I just toss the band.
Yep. Oh, that's
So,
good.
and that's another thing that I do during that time, and especially if you've got 6 feet. Sometimes it's so tight you can't bring
Yeah,
you
true.
can't use a band or anything anyways.
That's true. Okay, the other thing I believe they're doing is they're doing self body marking. So put your Ironman stickers on the night before, and then you don't have to do your body marking at all. And I think now you've got it. If you're body marking the morning of, just bring your own marker.
Yep.
Usually for big races like this, we like to get the Ironman stickers,
Yep.
and then put the decals on. That's sort of fun. It sort of gets you in the mindset. So we'll do Ironman decaling the night before, something like that.
Yeah, that's fun for sure. I mean, it is kind of yeah. I like this. I like it. I like doing that too.
Yep. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the swim course. This is the same swim course that we did. Did I do it last year? 2 years ago? Whatever. Whenever I did it last. This is the same swim course. And so you swim. This would be west to this first buoy, and this is about 200 meters. Water temp, I think, is going to be low 60s. So I've done volunteer for this as well. I like to be right in the beginning. A lot of people had a bit of a challenge getting in the water when it was really cold, and even getting to this first buoy, there was some folks that struggled. So just know that if you're a good swimmer, just know that you want to position yourself, or you want to watch for people who may be struggling right in the beginning. Because anytime you have a tight corner early in the swim, that can get really congested.
Yep.
Of course, with the spacing, and if they're doing one person at a time as a launch, then like you said, this could be spaced out just fine, and they won't have any congestion here. But then you do these two buoys, and then you head east. So now you're swimming into the sun. So great thing to do pre-race, on the day before, 2 days before, is go down to the swim and look and see where the sun is at the time that you think you're going to be in the water, and you get a sense for what kind of goggles you're going to need
Yep.
to make sure that you can see as you go along. You hit these two buoys and turn around, and then you got this long back stretch. This is a long back stretch.
It takes a long. I mean, that's like a 45-minute swim for
It's
me.
Yeah,
All one way.
it is long, and I love swimming. I love the swim. I'm pretty consistent in my Ironman swims, and even when I'm going along here, I'm like, man, this is a long way because you're not turning, you're just going straight, and so it's a bit of a struggle, but you do get under the two bridges, and that's pretty cool. And then just the end here, and just that last little buoy, you got to turn around. I don't know how far this buoy is from the exit, I think one year it was actually pretty close. So it looks like there's a little bit of a swim here, but there might not be much distance there.
So John, how do you feel about the swim exit? And normally, I don't know what the situation is actually having people help you up the stairs or up a ramp.
You know, I, you know, I don't often need help getting out of the water. And sometimes when someone tries to help me, sometimes it makes it worse. And
That's what I
now
was going to say too.
the trick is that the problem is that you're horizontal for a long period of time and then you
Yep.
stand up. And so, and especially in cold water, you can have blood leaving the brain. And so you do have some balance issues coming out of the water. And so it makes a lot of sense for people to want to help you out.
Yeah.
But sometimes when they,
or orthostatic hypotension.
that's right, that's right.
Yeah.
But sometimes they can offer too much help and that actually can throw, me off balance. And so, people they're trying to help, but it is still a struggle sometimes, depending on the exit. This is a ramp. And so the ramp getting
Okay.
out,
Is it steep?
right, it's not stairs now. I'm looking, Laura's to my right
Because
here.
I thought when I did it, it was stairs there.
It was stairs, right? That's what I'm trying to think. Is it stairs?
And it was and it was steep.
No, they had us come out on the grass, out on the beach, right?
Yeah, I think they come up a ramp
then we
now.
run.
Yeah. So I think it's a
Okay.
ramp, which is a little better. The stairs are tough. You do need, if they are stairs, go and check it out, make sure. Because sometimes you got to be careful with that first step that
Mhm.
your legs don't get caught underneath the step because
Yep.
you're swimming up to the step. And then as you stop, sometimes your legs can carry through and get under that first step. So you just got to check it out ahead of time. And if they do a practice swim, probably good to make sure you're figuring out the exit part.
Actually, that's something we didn't talk about. So most or a lot of these races, they'll have practice swims. And, I always try and do the practice swim.
Oh,
I find it really helps. At least it may not help me physically, but it helps me psychologically.
mm-hmm.
Like I've been in that water before.
Yep.
It helps you kind of orientate to some landmarks. I can't advise that enough. If possible, to do the practice swim.
I do the practice swim as long as the quality of water is good. So when I've done Louisville, I didn't do the practice swim the second time. Louisville water is a little, but what you raised is a great point. Tempe water is super cloudy and muddy, and your visibility is terrible. So your visibility may be 6 inches. And so you do need to be prepared. And a lot of people complain about getting kicked or getting bumped. Well, no one probably doing it on purpose, but you just can't see in front of you. So you really have to pay attention to who is around you, and trying to be careful and learning what to sight. That's good. There are some good buildings to sight off of for this course, even with the sun. So it's a pretty good course to swim.
Yeah, it's hard to get off too far off track on this swim course for sure.
Yeah, but yes, because you're right along the edge here, and some people like to try to swim this tangent. It's not going to make that much difference. But it is something that you can try if you're good. You just need to swim as straight as possible. If you can do that, you'll be doing yourselves a lot of favor. Okay, so now you're going to get out. This is a long run, all right, from the swim exit to transition. They are not, I read they are not doing wetsuit strippers.
Good.
So you don't have that to deal with, but usually they put the wetsuit strippers right in the beginning. But for a race like this, if the water's cold and the air temp is cold as well, I'd actually advise running with the wetsuit all the way up until you hit your transition. We've actually done some research on that, and we've measured how much oxygen you consume if you wore your wetsuit all the way up versus carrying it versus halfway down. And actually, it was more economical to run with the wetsuit all the way up. And so what I do, and what I did the last time I did this race, is I just undid my zipper as I ran along here. And then when I got to the transition tent, then I took it off. And I had a volunteer help me at that point because, even though you don't have wetsuit strippers here, that's not going to be the case now. You won't have anyone help you get out of your wetsuit, but you can get your zipper down. And then I would run with the wetsuit up until you get close to the tent. And that way you're helping with your core temp. The other work that we've done is we've done core temperature while swimming. Actually just did a seminar with Norseman, and they presented some data on core temperature in cold water. And your core temperature goes down, oddly enough, predictably enough, in cold water. And so now you've got to get out and you've got to bring that core temperature back up as you start biking. And so by wearing the wetsuit initially through transition, you're actually helped with that just a bit.
So John, have you ever read anything or done anything on the ease of getting a wetsuit off? So when there's more water in it, for example, so if you were to get right out, take it off versus run 500 meters and try and take it off. I contend that it's easier to get it off quicker. Like as soon as you get out of the water, take it off.
Mm-hmm.
But that I wouldn't do it in a cold race, but maybe in a warmer race.
If you have water in the wetsuit, it can be easier to get off. And so sometimes you actually see people take the wetsuit off in the water.
Yeah.
Because you can get water in it, that expands the wetsuit and is easier to get it off at that point. But in terms of taking the wetsuit off right as you exit versus at the end, I don't know. I don't think there would be a difference, but no one's done that type of work at all. I have talked with Hoob, Dean Jackson, owner of Hoob Designs, and we did talk about doing a transition type experiment to see what type of clothing was easiest to get off and how fast to get it off. And then COVID hit. So all those plans got put on hold.
Yeah.
So no, it's a good question.
But I like your idea in a cold, because in Arizona, you'll be cold getting out of the water and the first bit of the bike, and you'll warm up eventually when the sun comes up.
Yep.
But I can remember when I did it, it was windy and that first loop was cold.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm looking at Facebook, and Bob's asking, would booties or lava socks work? Are they allowed? I don't know. It's going to be dependent on the temperature of the water, whether or not they allow booties. So check with the race information, and they'll announce whether or not you can wear booties during the swim. Pre-race, booties or lava socks would be fine. And then we're just all so cheap. We just don't want to lose anything. So just make sure you can tuck them away somewhere and either hand them off before you jump in for the swim, so you're not losing any.
So how about that research? Any research on swimming with booties versus not?
No research on it, and would love to do that. I think that'd be really neat to see if that does influence.
Because it feels to me like when I do it, I feel slower.
Totally.
To me.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe it's just the way the booties are, and I have ill-fitting booties that I've tried wearing. Yep. But it just feels a lot slower to me.
Yeah,
but
no,
it'd be a good little bit of research to do for sure.
That would be a nice applied project. Okay, so now we hit T1. There will not be, from what I'm understanding, there's not going to be a tent.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're going to have shade structures, from what I'm understanding.
Okay.
I would make sure to go, when I get down there, that's the first thing I do is go figure out if they're going to have tents or not. But I think because of COVID-19, they don't want to have any enclosures. And so now if they have no enclosures, you have to check, or you've got to think about what you're doing clothing wise. And because obviously you're not going to do a full change. Well,
I wonder if they're going to do it with just walls and not a roof.
Well, they said shade structures, and so
so just a roof.
That's what if you're planning on changing gear, once you get down to Tempe, go find out.
Yeah.
And figure out exactly what they're going to have and what the rules will be in terms of doing any type of changing, because nakedness is not allowed.
Yeah.
Now,
So John, do you typically change for you? Do you change into like a cycling short, or do you just wear a triathlon short?
I do not. I typically I wear the same gear throughout the entire race. Now I did change in one race, and that was Norseman,
Yeah.
and that's where nakedness was allowed, and they did not have a tent. and I learned I should not have tried to change because
Yeah.
and that was a mistake I made in that race was changing gear between the swim and the bike, and I really did not need to.
Yeah. So for me, I changed in Ironman Arizona. I changed from a swim gear, and I put on cycling shorts. And
Mm-hmm.
then in T2, I changed from cycling shorts to running shorts.
Mm-hmm.
And it, just the amount of time it took was so negligible. And for me, for the comfort, 112 miles,
Yep.
and and then just in running a marathon was just more comfortable in like a nice pair of running shorts
Yeah.
for the amount of time it took. That was my choice. I know a lot of people do that, but it does take time, right? Like it's probably was 30 seconds, 20 to 30 seconds each time. But in an Ironman, if you're looking at a 12-hour day or
Yeah.
11-hour day, 30 seconds for comfort might actually end up saving you, right?
That's
So
right.
if I could stay in aero on the bike a little longer because my shorts were better.
That's right. And you got to look at you've got to look at if you're going to use a one piece or a two piece. And
Yep.
I have worn a one piece, at a few different races because it's supposed to be faster. But man, when you have to use the bathroom, they can be a pain in the neck to get off and get back on. And that is
Yeah.
so. I'm going to be using a two piece for sure going forward with
Yeah.
any races I'm doing.
Yeah. Anything over Olympic distance, I'll wear a two piece just because of that. Because
Mhm.
if you've got, you get to stop to go to the bathroom, like and this is, we can talk about, this is good stuff to talk about because, I can get in and out of a porta potty in a two piece in about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Right. In a one piece, it could be 2 minutes by the time I get it. And,
Mhm.
and you're not supposed to get out, or you're not supposed to like, be bare.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to you got to get things, not necessarily zipped up, but back up.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm with you on that. Faster on the bike, okay, but slower in the in the porta potty. I guarantee you, the time difference
Yeah.
is
Yep.
yeah.
All right. So we are still in T1.
Yeah.
I say the other thing that's going to be really important, especially with COVID-19, is pack your bag before you leave your transition. Because
Yep.
in the past, the volunteers were great that you would just leave things behind, or they would gather it, not in a rude way. You wouldn't leave things behind, but the volunteer would say, okay, I got it. And then they pack whatever you have that needs to go back into the bag. And, obviously say thanks and very appreciative of that, but that's not going to be the case most likely with COVID-19. So when you get your transition bag, make sure your wetsuit's in it afterwards. Make sure that what your
Absolutely.
goggles are in afterwards. And otherwise, you're going to be going to the lost and found and trying to find some gear that maybe you lost. And that's obviously for T2 as well. But
Yeah.
make sure that you take your time, get your gear together, then hand your bag off or drop it off, whatever the rules are going to be for COVID-19.
John, just so you know, you're getting me all excited about racing because
Yeah,
we're talking about this. Like,
no,
I feel like I'm getting ready for a race, and then I'm
I
like looking
know.
at my calendar, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't have any races coming up.
We're 21 weeks away. We checked ours tonight.
21 weeks. That's a long time.
It is.
Like I'm actually thinking about like how much I've forgotten all the little things,
Yeah.
because it's coming up this weekend. It'll be a year since my last triathlon.
Well, it's funny, actually, in prep for this podcast, I went and looked at the Ironman Arizona site, and it said, "Oh, spot's still open." And I'm like, "Oh," but I am
You're in trailer
rebuilding my
mode.
trailer. I am in not Ironman shape. Okay, so then T1, make sure you put sunscreen on. So we all live in the Southwest. We know what it's like, and take the time to get sunscreen on any exposed skin. I think with Matt, we exchanged some messages. He was wondering about warm gear to wear that you could get rid of. I would go to, a drugstore or wherever and buy a set of tube socks, and I cut a slit in the tube socks, and then I can take that slit off, and I can have my hands free, or I could put the toes around my hands, and now I actually have gloves, and I've got these nice arm warmers that cost me $3 as opposed to $30, and then I don't feel bad if I have to throw them out. So
Yeah, I actually just, I will always watch the sales. And so I've probably have 5 or 6 pairs of arm warmers that I bet I've never paid more than $5 or $6 for.
Yeah.
And but in Arizona, I wore arm warmers the entire bike.
Yeah.
And I didn't take them off until the run, or till T2.
Yeah.
And I wore white ones.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the year I did it, it wasn't overly hot. But yeah, I definitely did that.
For Arizona in November, I would wear some arm covering for sure. Whether or not they're warmers or just some screen, a thinner.
Yeah, they were like the thin white ones. So, they're probably sun blockers / warmers. Yeah, for sure.
No, I would do that. And, with my tube socks, what I would do is I would put an extra pair in my special needs bag in case I threw a pair out and needed another pair, or I'd put them in T2, I'd put them in run special needs, and just, again, they're throwaways. And so you never know what's going to happen.
You could use it as a COVID mask, even just tie it around and you get yourself a COVID mask.
No, that's actually, that may be something we need to start adding to our checklist of things.
Exactly. So it's funny. Last week on my big ride, I got to Pahrump and I realized I forgot a mask. But I had to eat. Right, like that was my plan was to eat. I'm like, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna have to take my sock off and use my sock.
Oh, nice.
For a mask. I didn't. I went to Sonic, which you could. I did a drive up on my bike.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to, but and then so anyways, yes, you can use a sock as a mask if you need to.
I have a mask in my bike toolbox now, or tool bag. So
that's such a smart thing to do.
That's just the way we are now. All right, so let's see. Would you wear a skull cap?
No. My aero helmet is I have no vents.
Yep.
And so
definitely.
even on a cold day, I've never felt cold on my head. Now, if I had a really, if I didn't have an aero helmet and it was vented, maybe, but well, I wouldn't race without an aero helmet. That's just me.
Yep. I probably would not. I would do a race day call, and I may, put something in my special needs bag just in case the weather just turns and it's cold and rainy. Maybe then I'm going to want a skull cap. But other than some strange weather, probably not.
Yeah.
All right, but gloves. Again, with my tube socks, I can use those as gloves. But again, if it's cold and you don't like biking in the cold, that's a good deal. I would check the weather, and if there's going to be rain, you got to decide what you're going to do with rain. Rain in general isn't bad, but rain on a cold day can really ruin your day. And I know Arizona has had rain and cold at the same time, and then it's not bad to have some rain gear ready.
I know some people, it's not uncommon for people to wear surgical gloves.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Because they're quite easy to get on, and then they're tight as well, and you still get good grip, like on your shifters and on your grips. I would definitely do that in a rainy race. I think I would do that probably over almost any other thing for my hands.
Yeah, I've done surgical gloves, not for a race, but for training, and they can help. Laura, for Indian Wells, she used a heavier glove. Laura, do you remember what you used?
Dishwashing gloves.
Dishwashing gloves.
Yep.
So yeah, and that worked.
No, that's another real popular one. Bike racers do that a lot.
Yeah. And she is very susceptible to the cold weather with Reynolds, and so when she did Indian Wells, she really took the time to figure out how to get out of the water and get warm on the bike.
Yeah.
And that's important because that's a big part of your day and setting up success for the run. So if you're susceptible to the cold, think about gloves, arm warmers, maybe something on the vest, on the chest area. Make it comfortable.
Let's talk about the bike as far as like just the bike itself. And this year, especially being a different course, it being a little shorter.
Yep.
So, how do you figure out, let's say if we're doing a power or a heart rate, how would you go about figuring out your pacing? Because I know, one of the things that is very common for people is to overbike the first hour,
Yeah.
right? Especially when you're cold, trying to warm up. And you're excited, you're not, you've checked off the swim.
Yep.
So for me, for example, in a typical Ironman or a half Ironman, I have a power plan.
Yeah.
We talked about using like best bike splits, but this is an unusual distance, right? There's not a formula for, is it 79 miles?
Mm-hmm. No,
There's
and this won't be in best bike splits. Best bike splits anyhow.
Yeah. So, and there's lots of turns. How many loops is this?
Still 3 loops.
So yeah, three loops, lots of turns, very technical compared to, normally how Arizona is.
Mm-hmm.
But, so John, what kind of, like, how would you plan this out based off of maybe heart rate or power?
This is a bit of a dangerous distance because on one hand, you're like, oh, it's not 112 miles, but it's still over 70 miles. And so there's still an endurance event, obviously. But I think it would be easy to fall into mindset that, oh, this isn't 112, I'm going to go a lot harder. And I would say, no, stick with the plan that you were originally planning at for your 112 and really start off conservative and build into the ride so that once you're getting off that bike, you're ready to run. I think this is a great opportunity for people to bike the bike plan they had for the 112, apply it to this distance, and then get off and have a great run.
Yep. The one other thing that I would suggest, because it's so technical, normally we don't see technical Ironman courses like this, mm-hmm. right? This would, even 70.3s, you'd rarely see this technical. Like an Olympic distance race, sometimes it'll be pretty technical like this, and you really push hard, accelerating out of the turns. Yeah. I think it might be tempting, especially on the U-turns, to, go a little bit anaerobic for 10, 15 seconds.
That's right.
I would advise not to,
mm-hmm.
Not to do that, time after time after time on all these corners. And, because you're right. You do still have to run a marathon.
Yeah, that's right. And so I'd still approach this with the same power plan that I would have been doing for 112. Okay, maybe a little bit more, but
yeah, I'm gonna say I was gonna call a little bit of BS on that one, because I think you'd go a little bit harder. But because realistically, you're looking at like 3.5 hours compared to 5 hours.
That's right. Right.
So, so let's talk about that in a typical Ironman, percentage of FTP or percentage of heart rate. So in general, do you have a plan like that?
I have a target. I'm less detailed than you are on the plan. I usually have an overall number I'm shooting for, or, I have used best bike splits, and I've looked at different sections of the race to get a sense for, what kind of power to shoot for, but I'll usually try to stay under a certain amount for sure. And then, and above a certain amount for sure. And then have an average that I'm shooting for.
So do you do like 2 or 3 weeks before like an FTP test and kind of see where you're at, or you just kind of know off of your training?
I don't. I'm still, unfortunately, even though I've done all the reading and I teach on the power and all that, I still go a lot by rating of perceived exertion. So that may be why I get myself in trouble at times too.
So, I mean, when you look at, high level coaches, and there's not a ton of literature on this,
mm-hmm.
but when you read what people write on this, usually we're talking about 75 to 80% of FTP
Yeah.
for an Ironman.
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking at 80% for maybe the more seasoned person, 75% is what they recommend for first time or second time athletes. I kind of like that approach, is, especially nowadays, almost everyone, they may not do an FTP test, but if they're on Strava, for example, you can get an estimated FTP. If you're on Zwift or Ruvi, it'll tell you an estimated FTP. If you've been doing long training rides, you could look at your power duration curves. So there are ways to actually get that knowledge. And then, I also like looking at heart rate as well.
Yeah.
If I want to be purely, in a race like this, I'd want to be at my, we haven't talked much about it, but my LT1, that's where I'd want to be, 130 for me, 135 beats a minute. And, not spike it, obviously, right? There's no place on this course where there's no big long climbs where you'd potentially want to go a little higher. So, there's a couple ways to approach it, but I really think you need a plan. And I know not everyone has a power meter, so looking at that, and also I understand that maybe people don't know what that their aerobic threshold is, or the LT1. And an easy way to kind of estimate it is 180 beats a minute minus your age, and that's a good estimator of it if you don't know how to test it.
Oh, that's good, and no, you're spot on with that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you've got all these U-turns in this.
Well, and then into here, sorry, the other section, you have all the turns.
Yeah.
Right. It's not just the U-turns. How many turns are
all these 90-degree turns in the course that you're going to have to navigate. Now, what I don't know from the map is where the aid stations are, or where the special needs drop off is. And so again, if I get down to Tempe, that's the first thing I'm going to make sure, or if the athlete guide has it. I only saw the 2019 athlete guide, so I didn't see the 2020 guide. But first thing I'm going to do is figure out where the aid stations are, and I'm going to check and see what the COVID-19 rules are for accessing aid. I heard at one time, I thought the aid station for the 70.3 that you had to stop to get water, but then I also heard people riding through the aid station. So I think it's going to be important to know what the rules are and how aid will be given to you during the course, and how you get your special needs. That being said, if you are getting your special needs, you most likely need to stop to get your special needs bags. You don't need to be a hero. It's not Tour de France, where unless you practice getting a bag and then opening the bag up and getting stuff out of it, that is
as you're riding a time trial bike.
That's right. It is not. If you have not done that, stop and don't be a hero. Get your special needs, get what you need out of it, and then start biking. That 30 seconds will save you a potential accident or somebody else.
I wouldn't even consider it.
Yeah,
I would not even consider it. Especially when there's people passing you. There's too much going on.
And that being said, if you are not stopping for special needs, what I always do, and even going to aid stations, I look over my shoulder, I look to see who's behind me, and then I am going wide of any of the special needs or the aid stations that I'm not stopping at or getting anything at. Because
that's where most accidents happen.
Yeah, that's right. A volunteer may step out, a cyclist may have been stopped and you didn't see them, and all of a sudden they start up again. And it's starting up. Sometimes you go a little wiggly at first, and all of a sudden you're getting yourself into a dangerous situation. So I really treat transitions and special needs areas really carefully. And so when you get to Tempe, or if it's in the athlete guide, know where your aid stations are, and then make your plan in terms of what you need to get from and you don't need to get anything from them if you don't need it, but you got to have that plan and you got to know what you're going to get.
Agreed.
All right, let's see, where are we? We're
coming into T2.
All right, what do you do in T2?
What do I do? Get in and get out as quick as possible.
Yeah.
I think that T2 is one of those things that if you got your stuff together you can make up time. I think some people really dilly-dally around in T2.
Mhm.
And I always pride myself on a quick T2. So, if I'm not changing clothes, which obviously in this situation I wouldn't be,
Mhm.
get off the bike, get the shoes on, get a hat on, um, because once again for sun,
Yep.
get a hat on, something, maybe another lather of sunscreen,
Mhm.
and get going.
Yeah.
I don't really, like I said, I don't really have much of a plan for T2 other than make it quick.
Mhm.
That's me.
No, that's good. And I think your T2, you have a little less stuff to take care of
Yeah.
coming through T2. But again, I'd say make sure you pack your bag. And I like to say, I try to be deliberate in transition too. I try not to rush so I don't forget something, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I don't want to be taking my time. So I try to be really deliberate. And in the last few miles headed into T2, I'm really thinking about what I need to do when I get to T2. And I'm already, in my mind trying to get to the run in that last section of the bike.
Yeah.
Now, Matt said
Well,
the bike course is 4 loops, by the way. So
okay. And we did talk a little bit about this before, but T1 and T2 can be practiced,
yeah.
right? Like if you are, I love the fact that you're thinking about it, but I mean, there's nothing stopping anybody from a couple weeks before just setting up a transition area in front of your house
Yep.
and zipping through it 4 or 5 times, and then maybe the next weekend doing it again 4 or 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could shave a minute off,
Mm-hmm.
well, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a minute less time you're out there.
That's right.
And it's not difficult to to take a minute off. I've seen some really bad T2s, some really bad T1s.
No, you're right. And I would once again know whether or not there's a change tent. And if there isn't, then that might dictate what you're going to do clothing wise. And if there is, then like you said, you like to change into some run gear, then you have that option. So make sure you check that out. All right. And
Well,
then,
and in this case, make sure, because if there's limited nutrition on the course, make sure you got what you need as far as your nutrition too.
yeah, I was going to mention that before we finished up, is I think that's going to be something I'm certainly going to be looking at for the next Ironman I do, is trying to be as self-sufficient as possible
Yeah.
on the bike and on the run. And on the bike, this is a great bike course to try to take as much as you can, because you don't have the hills to deal with. There's really not a negative penalty for carrying extra weight. And you're going to have to think about the same thing on the run. I think if I was going to do this run, I would I usually run with a water bottle anyhow, but I would plan on wearing my run vest with some water. And then even for special needs, have another bladder to switch out. And that's just me, just thinking, trying to be safe in this COVID-19 period, and trying to interact with the aid stations as little as possible for me.
Yep,
all right.
agreed.
So this run course, I actually like this run. I've had a lot of problems on my runs, but I like this run course.
This is bringing back nightmares for me.
Oh yeah, you had some problems on this course too.
Yeah, mile 16, and I just bad memories. Actually, it's probably more like mile 17, but I really do like this run course a lot. It's a little bit of everything. There's a little bit of hill.
Yep.
The change of surface is nice.
Yep.
Some of it's on pavement, some of it's on like the dirt.
Yep.
Some of it is on sidewalk, which I think is actually good for you, just to kind of switch it up a little bit. I love just, you're along the lake the entire time.
Yes, that's fantastic. It's
I can't think of many better places to actually have an Ironman, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, this is one of my favorite run courses to do. With 2 loops, you can see where you're going, where you're going. You've got these out and backs that aren't that long, and so mentally you can sort of get in your mind, oh, I just need to run 2 miles out. I got to run 2 miles back. I got to run another 1.5 miles over here, and so forth. And you've got a little bit of hill over here. and some downhill and so it's really, and you can look across the lake, and lake is nice. And, uh, as far as viewing goes, you know,
Yeah.
it is and a lot of it is path. So you're not even dealing with road traffic, which is great.
Yeah.
So,
Or cambered surfaces. The
yep,
surfaces in general is very flat.
yep, yeah.
Yeah. No, I like this run course too, as much as it bringing back some bad memories.
Yeah, right. And I don't know, again, here they've got all these aid stations marked out here, but I don't know what their I think this is the old map. So, again, if I get there to Tempe this week or the week before, and when I get there, first thing I'm doing is double checking where the aid stations are. So I know what I need to carry, or where I can get aid at that point. So,
The one thing that kind of surprised me on this course was the first mile.
mhm,
So it's wiggly there. It's also a little bit up and down there.
yeah, that's right.
And I thought, when I originally kind of looked at this course, I was like, oh, it's just gonna be dead flat.
Mhm.
That's a little bit undulating,
It
as it
is,
were.
and this little part
A
right
little,
here, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And when you're not really maybe mentally ready for it,
Yeah.
especially because you're coming out of T1 and you're just like, okay, I'm ready to go. And even the second loop when you're maybe a little bit tired,
Mhm.
that's a section that you want to be aware of. And then obviously on the other side of the road where we have the hill
Yeah, right here.
on, you
Mhm.
know,
And
I personally really like it because I think it mixes up your run a little bit. You use a little
mhm.
bit of different musculature.
Yep.
But you know, if I'd never been down there before, I definitely would want to look at that.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
two sections are the sections.
No, this is, I would definitely advise going and running this ahead of time. It won't feel like much, a
Yeah.
few days before the race, but at mile 22, it feels like a pretty big hill. And then you've got to run downhill, which is not necessarily as easy either. But once
Yeah.
you hit that downhill, now you're really in for that home stretch, and
Yeah.
and hitting that finish line.
Yeah.
I'm ready to sign up again.
Yeah. I think, is there a relay option? Maybe you and I could go do
Wow.
it.
No, this is fun to talk through. And yeah, I see Liba's even saying, good point. Let's keep an eye on what happens with Ironman Florida this weekend and see
Yeah.
how Ironman adjusts some things, and then realize that may be applied to Ironman Arizona.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect.
So good stuff.
Yeah. I'm ready to go race.
Yeah. Oh, and I do see a comment, P through the kit. I do not. Now, the very first race, I was given that advice by someone that they said, "Oh yeah, no, just pee while you're running," and I was not anywhere near a podium, and that became so uncomfortable that I was like, "No, if I'm not vying for a podium spot, I'm not on the run, especially. Uh, I'm going to hit a porta potty. If I'm, if it's a tight race, well, okay, and you're shooting for a Kona slot or something, maybe then. But if you're working to finish, then take advantage of the porta potties. And
Yeah, I agree. If you're like in fourth place and you think there's gonna be 4 spots for Kona,
yeah,
it might be worth it,
don't
right?
stop. Yep.
But honestly, the little bit of time you spend in the porta potty you may actually help you
Yeah,
in
that's
the
right.
long run.
That's right.
That's the other thing that we're looking back on my Ironman experience. I number one, my mistakes were running too fast in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, I probably should have walked the aid stations earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Got in more. I was more dehydrated than I realized.
Yeah.
And I was just grab a couple drinks, keep going. I really those were two things, because at the end I was walking the aid stations anyways,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
walking more than just the aid stations.
Yeah.
So probably if I was to do this again, and when I do the next Ironman, the first couple aid stations I'm going to walk,
Yeah.
and make sure I get a decent amount of fluids in and fuel in. But that's, that's another little bit of advice. You just feel so good on that first, in the first loop, or even like the first 10K, because you're not on the bike anymore and you can sense that you're going to finish. And so as far as I got to be honest with you, I'll urinate on the bike.
Yeah.
Mostly because the last time I stopped on the bike and went to a porta potty, I got ran into.
Yeah, right. I remember. Yeah.
So I was like, well, you know what? I'm not doing that again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But on the run,
mm-hmm.
yeah, I think I would be I'd be stopping.
Yeah.
And once again, unless I'm having my day and I know
that's right.
that minute or so could be the difference.
Yeah. No, it could. And it is a it's probably something to practice, not practice being, but stopping and running, because sometimes you can run better after you stop for a bit. So it is but 2 weeks away, and those doing Florida this weekend, they should have a good race plan. And I agree with you 100%. Is that race plan, you got to follow it from the get-go and not get caught up in the moment. And the one thing about the Arizona course is you see your spectators quite often, and that's on one hand encouraging. On the other hand, you just have to watch it and stay within your plan. So
agreed. All right,
I'm ready to go. I'm ready to sign up.
All right, well, good luck training for it in 2 weeks.
Well, good luck to everyone who's doing it, and we'll be electronically cheering you on. And we're a bit jealous, but we want you to be safe at the same time. So
be safe. Take care of yourself. So let's just switch topics really quickly. John, what do you got going on this weekend? More trailer work?
More trailer work. Looks like the weather's going to turn a little bit, so maybe I do jump on the trainer a bit, but mostly trailer work planned this weekend.
Good.
How about you?
Normally this weekend I'd be out riding, but it's supposed to be pretty crummy. I'll go for a run tomorrow morning and then a swim. We're swimming outdoors right now. Our pool is being worked on still where we normally swim. So we got the month of November to swim outside. So I was contemplating bringing the wetsuit tomorrow morning because it might be kind of chilly to actually swim tomorrow morning. And then Sunday, I think it's going to be a trainer ride because it's supposed to be pretty miserable.
When this wind kicks up, that can make the outdoor pools get cold pretty fast. And if the heater isn't cranking away, it can be a little...
Especially overnight. I think if it was, it had the day to warm up, it might be better. So I think I'll be wetsuit swimming tomorrow.
Oh, that's good. Well, it's good to practice. So
yep, absolutely.
Well, hey, you have a good weekend training.
Yeah, you too. Good weekend with your trailer.
Have fun and train smart.
Okay, thanks.
And I'll keep working on the trailer.
Okay, and everybody racing this weekend and getting ready for Arizona, have a great weekend of training and racing. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys next week.
All right. Talk soon.
Okay, bye-bye.